I'm going to attempt to do this demo today. All right, this is going to be a bowl in a bowl. I saw this demo done by Tod Raines in Texas, and I've talked to Todd several times on the phone in regards to a few things, and I am going to actually mention him in my demo today because I have two items that I purchased from Todd. He has it's called Woodturner's Store, woodturnerstoolstore.com. He's got a couple of tools that I'm going to use of his today, and I do know how much they are, because that'll be the next question. And I will say that when I get to that point and use the tool. What this is going to be is what looks like two bowls. It is one piece of wood. I did not make two bowls and glue them together. I had that comment this morning. This is offset turning. We're going to turn one bowl and then offset it and turn the other bowl. Now, this one that I did is an experiment. And I had a guy at the Presque Isle Club. He argued with me during the whole demo about a flat bottom. The demo was designed as a round bottom bowl. Okay? It's not going to be used anyway. That's the way the demo was designed. At least the demo that I saw from Tod Raines. Well, when I got all done, I said, you know what? If I wanted to put a flat bottom on it, how could I do that? So I did some experimenting, and I did do a flat bottom on this bowl. And during my demo, I'll explain how that's done. When I turned the first bowl, this guy at Presque Isle says, put the flat bottom on now. You can't do that. If you did that, when you put two bowls in a cupboard, the bottom bowl is going to be level. Am I correct? Everybody sees that and understands that. You put a top bowl in, unless you set it perfect, you throw it in there, that's how it's going to end up in the cupboard. Am I right? So, we're going to turn the inside of the top bowl first. So, if I have that on the lathe straight and I put a flat bottom on it, when it goes in the cupboard, it's going to be, the top bowl is going to be level and the bottom bowl is going to be crooked. No, he says, no, you're wrong. No, if you put that flat, that one will be level. Okay, do me a favor, go home and do it. I gave him a blank. I said, here, take this home and go do the demo. You can have the wood for free and bring it back, and I want to see you turn that or show me how you did that. He came back, he said, I'm sorry. I said, you know, it is a little bit difficult to understand, but in reality, and when we start doing it, you'll see what I mean. This is the first one I did for Presque Isle. I'm sorry, this is the one I did at home. This was my practice piece before I went to Presque Isle to do this one. The round bottom bowl is the way it's designed. I did this, my practice bowl. I said, I got to figure out how to do that so it sits flat and the bottom bowl is level. And it is. Okay? Now, and I will also explain this during the demo. If everything isn't correct, this is what you're going to get. Notice this side of the bowl is very thin, and this side of the bowl is very thick. It's because I didn't have something right. And I will go through that as I'm doing the demo. But I want you to see if it's not right as I'm explaining it while I'm doing it, this is what you're going to get. I know a lot of you came up here and you looked at this while they were sitting here, so you should understand what I'm talking about. The bottom bowl, it's very thin on this side, very thick on this side. The top bowl is very thin on this side and very thick on this side. Doesn't look good at all. And of course, I wasn't concerned about the finish or anything when I saw how far off I was. It's like I can't save it now anyway. So the only reason I kept it is to show you what will happen if we don't do it right. Hopefully I'll do it right today. All right. The other question, what size do you start with? Doesn't matter. Whatever size bowl you want. 6-inch, 5-inch, 7-inch, it just doesn't matter. Okay? Whatever size bowl you want to make, get that blank. This is one of the tools I was talking. Is any camera okay here or? Hello? Okay. I don't know if they can zoom in on this and so you can see the tool. This is a drive center. And what this is for, this has actually 3 points on it. The 2 outer points are adjustable. Okay, the center point is stationary. And this is for faces that are uneven. Now, this particular piece, the faces are pretty even, pretty parallel. This is the blank that we're going to turn. So I really wouldn't have to use this, but this comes in very handy for pieces that are, the front is just totally irregular. And I'll show you how that works when we mount it on here. I can't get used to this, all these adapters. You know, everything, most of us, everything we have is number 2 Morse taper. This is a number 2 Morse taper at this end, a number 3 Morse taper at this end, and the threads are M33, by whatever threads count they have. I'm not exactly sure. And again, what's nice about this is if that face were offset, and I turned this round yesterday at home just to save time, I mean, because this was way out of whack. Now, if your face is irregular, you've got the center point engaged. Of course, it's not going to drive that way. I mean, you could put some compression on and but it would keep on slipping. What you do now is, and again, I've already got the holes in there because I did this yesterday. You can turn these in to take up that gap if it were uneven. And because you've got 3 points in there now, it's going to drive it without slipping. Now, you can tighten these up by finger, and if you want to tighten them up more, this is an Allen head. You can use an Allen wrench and tighten it up even more, although you don't need to. As long as it's engaged in the wood, it's fine. It's going to drive the piece. And I just did something I shouldn't have done. I should have had the speed all the way down when I turned that on. I mean, we're between centers, so chances of it going anywhere are about slim to none. Yeah, I know. But, you know, things can happen. Always turn it down completely. Safety glasses, I do wear bifocal. It's a no-line bifocal, and it's hard to get used to ones with lines. But these are bifocal safety glasses. I bought them at Lowe's. By the way, that drive center, 3 different sizes. Yeah, that's it. woodturningtools.com. He has 2, 2.5, and 3-inch. 2 is $60. 2.5 is $65, and 3 is $70. And then before I forget, the other calipers that we're going to use, and it's important for part of this project. You don't have to have these to do it, but when we get there, these calipers are 3150. They measure in millimeters, inches, and fractions. Percentage too, you know, like it'll measure in fractions, like 1 in a 16th or 1.25 n plus millimeter. And they do come in handy. And again, for part of this project, like I said, they come in pretty handy. As most of you know, I do hats, and I find these to be really good for measuring my brim. And it's just, because the other ones, the regular calipers, you set them, and when you go in, I get all these lines in that I got to sand out. With this, I can put this on there, and it's just spring-loaded. I don't get any marks or anything on my wood, and I can look at it. I know exactly what I want. So that works out real well for me. These glasses are about $10, 10 or 12, I'm sorry, $15. Woodturningtools.com in Texas, Tod Raines. Lowe's. And they're bifocal glasses. There's a lot of controversy. I've heard people say, oh, you can't wear gloves. Others say you can. I do it because those tips coming off, especially when the wood is dry, that's hot, and it hurts after a while. And as long as my feeling is, as long as the glove is tight, I buy leather gloves so it slides on the wood. I don't think there's a problem with it. Others will say, oh, no, you can't wear them. Okay. All right, all we're going to do at this point is eat shavings. No, we're gonna turn the outside of a bowl. This is a piece of cherry. Have no idea where I got it. I know it's been in my shop probably for 5 years, if not longer. So it is dry. I don't particularly like turning dry wood. It's dusty. It's harder to get a good clean cut. Everybody says, well, you can't sand wet wood. You certainly can. All of my hats are sanded while on the lathe. Once they're dry, I never sand them again. So, and the sandpaper I use for that is from Klingspor. I use 3-inch discs, hook and loop. And you can actually, even though the wet wood builds up on these things, I can take air and blow them off and clean it. And I use a wire like toothbrush I buy at Harbor Freight. You buy 3 different brushes for $5. And it cleans it right up. And I use a total of 6. I start at 120, 180, 220, and that's it. And I use a total of 6 discs per hat. So that's how long that sandpaper will last. And it cleans up, and that's all wet wood. In fact, it's so wet that I have shower curtains on both sides of my lathe because all the other equipment in my shop was getting wet and rusted. So Now, I did make some templates for this. You don't have to. Trader probably wouldn't need a template. He was an architect. He could look at something and tell if it's spherical or not. In this particular case, this project needs to be spherical. If it's not, you're going to end up with that. Okay? So it does need to be spherical, or as close to spherical as possible. These, I have a 6, 6.5, 7, and 7.5. And the only reason I made a 7.5 template last night, only because this piece of wood was a little bit bigger than 7, and I didn't want to have to turn all the wood away. And again, I'm doing something I shouldn't do. And I got to try to remember you're doing a demo, so don't do it. Don't move your tool rest around while the lathe is running. It's spinning. Okay? I have had some accidents where, you know, oops, and it hits the piece of wood, and your project is either shot or comes flying off the lathe. One of the two. Now, what these templates are for should be kind of self-explanatory, but I believe this is going to be about a 7.5-inch bowl. Yeah, it's going to be about a 7.5. You can use this template to see if you're spherical. And just keep checking it, because you want it to be as close to that as you can. Obviously, this notch here is for my tenon. And the way I mark my tenons, again, very simple. I think that's, I'll tell you in a minute. I always forget how tenon is about 3.5. Okay? This happens to be a center find ruler. You do not need a center find ruler. Any ruler will work. Somewhere in the middle, notch it out where it'll fit over your live center. Now I can measure, see, 3.5, it's 1 3/4. I can mark 1 3/4. That's going to be my tenon. Thing is, some people will use dividers, and that works too. The only problem with dividers is one side, the side closest to you is the point that contacts the wood. The other side, you don't want it to contact the wood. But Jimmy Clue says if it touches that side, it's going to end up in your back. And it could. If you are going to use dividers, there's one safer way to do it, and that's to use a compass with a pencil on the other end. Because then, if that other end touches the wood, the pencil point's going to break. You sharpen your pencil and put it back in. It's a whole lot better than sticking you in the neck with those 2 points. But, and anything you do, I mean, there's 100 ways to do just about everything. This is just my way. Not saying my way is the right way. But it's just the way I do it. I usually make my tenon about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit less. You never want the bottom of your tenon, you never want it to bottom out in your chuck. If it bottoms out in your chuck, you will not have a good hold. It'll never run through. My jaws are all dovetail jaws. Go. So I have to make mine a little dovetail. And the other thing is if this nub is too long in the middle, it could bottom out on your chuck. I brought a chuck with deep jaws, so I don't have to worry about that. All I'm concerned about is that where the jaws hit the ball, it's flat. And it's about a 15-degree angle for a dovetail. That's close enough. And you want the bottom to be flat so that your jaws sit on it flat. That's going to be your best hold. I like dovetail jaws because you're constantly pulling the piece of wood into the jaws. Again, strictly my preference. Somebody else is going to say, no, I like the serrated jaws, or it holds better, gets you a bite, or whatever. With the dovetail jaws, you can actually leave your tenon on and make that part of your piece. And if you've got the diameter of that tenon correct and the jaws are holding it correctly, it usually will not mar your piece and you're not doing any damage. With the serrated jaws, when it clamps in, you're going to see all those lines all the way around it. So you're either going to have to clean that up if you want to leave the tenon on as part of your piece, or you're going to have to remove the tenon. Either or. Okay. Okay. Now, actually, with this, I'm just trying to hog wood away as quick as I can, so I'm not riding the bevel. I'm just scraping. I'm not getting any tear out, a little bit. So I'll show you what I do when I get to the point. Right now, all I'm trying to do is get this shape to fit on there as close as I can. But again, I will show you how I get rid of the tear out when I get to that point. If your tool is sharp, you can get a pretty good cut just doing it like I'm doing it, scraping it. Again, I don't really like turning dry wood anymore, but now I am riding the bevel, and there's a heck of a difference. I don't know how many, some of you may, the guy from Pennsylvania that we had, Bill Grumbine, we had him here. And he did a shear cut that I am going to do here when I try to get rid of some of this tear out. Like I said, more than anything right now, I'm just trying to get this spherical shape. That's what I'm more concerned about. Okay, so basically, I have to get rid of some wood right in here. Now I am using a bevel cut at the bottom here to try to get Now, the other thing is, this is cherry, and again, very hard wood, dry wood. Not my favorite wood to turn. I mean, it's pretty wood. Yeah, we're real close there. You know what? That should do it. Okay. Now, what Bill Grumbine did to get a nice, clean cut, boy, we are right. Boy, pretty darn close. He used a shear cut where he brought his tool way down low and rode the bevel and used the edge of the tool and sliced the wood. It's almost like using a skew chisel. And that's just as smooth as it can be. I do have some tool marks in it. Yeah, it's just, I got rid of a lot of the tear out there. And there are a few tool marks in it, but I have a lot of 40 grit sandpaper. No, I'm just kidding. I usually start with 120 and I go through 120, 180, 220. So the things I do. You know, there is such a thing as trying to sanding it too much. If you go down to 800, 900, 1,000, you'll get it so smooth that when you try to put a finish on it, it won't take anything. So it's something to think about. We do have our spherical shape pretty close. A little bit more. And in the interest of time, I'm not real concerned about the finish on this. I can always sand it when I'm at home, you know. I just want to get to the point that I can show you how to do the hopefully the better one of the three over there. Now, when we're all done, the bottom of our bowl is actually going to be in that tenon, because we're going to do it the way it's supposed to be, the way that I saw that it was supposed to be done with the round bottom. I would need a vacuum chuck to do the flat bottom like I did. We don't have that here. So we don't have that option. Okay. We're good. Yeah, you can use any kind of drive that you want. The only reason I brought this was to explain about if this was all, out of whack, this would be a good drive center to use. Okay? It's the only reason I brought it. When I learn of something that is of some use, I like to share it. It's easier to show you than to say, oh yeah, well, if that's cattywampus, so you want to use this, and to try to explain this to them. And again, I only use this as a guide. I don't have to make it fit. I've got, oh, wait a minute, you can't see it on that side, huh? You can see I've got the curve that I need. It's a little bit larger than what my template is, but as long as that curve is right, and I'm right there. Pretty darn close. It's close enough. I mean, it's good for my house in Geneva. So, now, the tenon should be about a 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch opening between the jaws to be a perfect circle. Jaws are made in one piece and then cut in 4. So whatever size kerf, probably about 1/8 of an inch that they use to cut those pieces. So I'm a little bit bigger there than should be, but you know what? This is not a heavy piece. It's not going anywhere. I am going to bring the tailstock up only because I can, and as long as you can and it's not in your way, use it. Now all I'm going to do is true up. These bowls, I'm going to make the walls about a 1/4 inch thick. Normally, I would make my bowls 1/8 to 3/16. Normally, if I'm, making a useful bowl. So, but for demonstration purposes only, I'm going to make them about a 1/4 inch thick each. So we're going to make 2 bowls. So I got to mark this at 1/2. Okay? Now what I do, just to make things simpler, easier, and faster, I use a parting tool. That's going to be my 2 bowls. Everything in the middle is going to be gone. I really don't like turning dry cherry. Huh? Oh, yeah. And you know what? It's the only reason I am is because it's the only thing. I had a piece of maple the right size. I just turned it around and I saw a crack in it. And I didn't want to bring that and have it blow apart on me, so I just discarded that. And I picked up the next thing I could find. And then another thing is, I'm going to take the tailstock away. So, and you want to keep, when the only thing that's holding it is the chuck, keep checking it. Especially if you're turning green wood, wet wood, because you're compressing those fibers, and it's going to compress and it's going to loosen up on you. This shouldn't because it's dry, but anything can happen. Better off to check. And the other thing I'm doing here, I'm taking pretty big cuts and being very aggressive, and that's one of the reasons for all that. If you do a nice, slow, even cut, it usually goes pretty well. Another thing that's a good idea, I don't know if you could see it or not, I have this marked open and closed with a little arrow, because every chuck is different. And, you know, you forget which one is which, and you go, oh, darn it, and you loosen it instead of tightening it. It's marked. I know which way to turn it. It does make a difference. And when I'm not as aggressive, how much smoother it is. All right, this is the part where I said it's kind of important, and that's why I like these calipers. And I have it set up in fractions. We're going to turn this, and we'll get to that in just a few. We're going to turn this, it's going to be offset. Okay, so we want to make however far we're going to be offset, let's say 1.5 inches. I'll get to that when we get to the offset part. That needs to be consistent thickness. If I'm a little heavy on the bottom or a little bit light on the bottom, it's not going to affect my bowl and my bowl. Okay? The only thing that's going to affect it, 0.5, 15, 16, 17, so I'm getting thicker as I go down. So we want to thin that out. And the deeper we go with the 14, 13, 12, I'm actually 13 there, 14 there, so we're a little bit thicker on the edge. Okay, 14.3. I'm real close. I'm close enough. As far as the bottom of this bowl is concerned, I mean, for aesthetic purposes, obviously you want a nice curve in there. But I'm not going to work a lot on that curve. If I was, I'd get a sander out. I mean, I brought one, but I'm not going to go through all of that. And you know, these are the best calipers you could find. I mean, you can tell more from feel than you can, you know. And this is one of the reasons I wear a glove, because if I do accidentally bump that, I'm probably still going to cut through the glove and get something on my hand, but at least it won't slice it like a razor blade, but, you know, without giving me a little bit of a warning. All I'm doing is rounding these corners off just a little bit so nobody gets, I don't want to see blood today. Okay? At home, I just take a piece of sandpaper, quick, you know. All right, we are pretty close. Yeah, and I'm only concerned about the first inch and a half, and I'm close enough. I hope I did this one right so I don't. This is why I hate using adapters, you know. Hey, I got lucky. Actually, I kind of measured this at home, and I thought, you know, yeah, I kind of measured it at home, and I said, well, you know, if I take off too much, it might be too small. But now I am going to use this tailstock again. I don't trust these as far as I can throw them. Now what we got to try and do is finish off the bottom of this bowl. Now there is a way that you can leave a tenon on here. This is going to be the jam chuck I'm going to use when I turn this around. You could drill this out the size of your tenon. All you need is this outside edge, okay, to hold that bowl. So if you wanted to, you could leave this on and then just make sure that the center of this is hollowed out to clear this. Okay, enough. Remember, we're going to cock it a little bit, offset it, so it's got to be quite a bit bigger than this. And there's not a whole lot left here. So I've used this for, I don't know, 100,000 different things. So all I'm going to do now is try to round off the bottom of this ball. See, that thing is just bouncing around like hell. Mine at home is as smooth as glass. But we'll be okay. And of course, as you do all these steps, you would naturally sand it and finish everything up. And we don't need to make a lot of sanding dust, and this has actually got to go down more. Now this is the part I don't like. I got to take this away in order to get rid of that nub. And I don't really like doing that, but let's make sure that that chuck is tight enough. Seems to be okay. Because we do have to get rid of that. I hate these things. I really do. But I mean, sometimes you just have no choice. When I make those mirror rings that's on the display table back there, that's the excess wood around the hat when I do my hats. And I have to use these. I don't like using them. I don't trust them. And yet, I gotta honestly say, I've never had anything come off. I've never had an accident because of it. And again, you would sand it all at this point. My concern here is not so much the finish as is the okay, we're all done. No. And I did check this to make sure this was going to fit before I left home. Because I had that happen one time too. I go, oh, damn. I had to turn it around and make a whole new tenon. Rubber Chucky makes these. They have several different styles and configurations. They are handy. They do work. Okay, now what we need to do is we have to, and you know what? I'm lucky because it's clearing. We cannot bottom out. If we bottom out, this is not going to run true. We only want it to hold on the edge. Okay? And you can see how it's turning. And that's going to determine basically how deep our offset bowl is going to be. And is there a way to know before you start cutting? Yeah. Show you that in just a minute. Okay, I don't want this to be the interest of time. I don't want this to be, you know, it's not even as deep as this, I don't think. And there is a way to figure it out roughly. Put your pencil on here. Okay, that's enough for me. That enough for you? For offset? Want it deeper? Does it really matter? Nobody cares? I've got 3/4 of an inch on one side and 1/4 on the other. Do we have an overhead? Can we go deeper? Okay. That okay? That's going to be half an inch on one side and an inch on the other. It doesn't look like, I think when I'm tightening this up, I'm bottoming out. And we don't want to bottom out. So I'm going to hollow that out just a little bit more on the bottom. The only place you want it holding is around the outside edge. By the way, this is hard maple. Oh yeah, we should be good now. Got to take some of this edge off. It's not seating right. And this is where, if I'm not spherical enough, this is where we're going to run into a problem, and where you'll see the bottom is just a little bit. In reality, I should take a little bit more off the sides, but hey, if nothing else, you'll see what not to do. There you go. That's true. Other people's mistakes. You're right. Then you'll learn what not to do. I'm trying to get it approximately where it was before, but you know what? I don't think we need to do that, really. All right, we're going to leave it there, and we'll draw a pencil line and see what it's going to look like approximately. We're about the same, just a different angle. Or half an inch and a little over an inch. So we're good. Now, turn it down, start it up, and turn it up. Now, the first thing I want to do is clean this up a little bit here. Okay. Now we're going to go about halfway to 1/4 inch walled bowls. Yeah, this is going to be off just a little bit. And it's because I don't have a good enough sphere on there. But, I think it's going to be close. So we'll see. And in something like this, speed is your friend because it's intermittent cutting until you get into solid wood. All right? So, and you cannot be aggressive with this. All we're doing here now is creating the outside bowl or bottom bowl. You want to try to follow the same contour that you have. Just so it looks right. We're pretty close. Pretty close. It's a little bit thicker on this than this side, but it's relatively close. I would have preferred for it to be a little bit better, but and whatever curve you have here, you want to try to do the same thing. These are supposed to be two bowls, the same, stacked on top of each other. So I see that I have to go in a little bit. To try to get that same curve. It's off, but it isn't off by much. And whatever edge you have on this ball, in this particular case, it's straight. We want this to be straight. If this was curved in a little bit, you'd want to try to curve this one in a little bit. Remember, there's supposed to be two bowls the same, just stacked on top of each other. Now, there is one way you could correct this a little bit, but it would almost require a vacuum chuck. And that would be to realign it, and you could take off a little bit more on the inside and hopefully get the two closer. I mean, there is some room for possible adjustment. You know, if you get this far and you got a nice piece of wood, I'd hate to throw it away thinking, well, I might be able to fix it a little bit just by taking off the inside a little and evening this up. I do have to take a little bit more off this. We're going to call it the inner bowl. You know, because it is off a little bit, as far as offset, I'm going to leave it the way it is. As far as the thickness is concerned here. Just going to use a sharper tool to try to get it better. And the grind on this tool is, if you guys remember when Johannes Michelson was here with his jig, it's got the 3 facets on it. It's got a pretty good sharp point to it, so it's easy to get in there. And so I'm just going to use this to clean it up a little bit. Now, normally on these edges, because you don't want them real sharp, I would not take a tool on them. I would just use a piece of sandpaper on them, knock it off, and I would probably just do it by hand. Now, there's only one other thing we got to do. Right now, this looks like it's all one piece of wood. If you look at this seam, it just looks like, well, it's one piece of wood with just, it's stepped off. This side is about 7/8 of an inch, and this side is 1/2 inch. And we could have went more. Mike wanted me to go more, but I couldn't seem to get it to run very true that way, and I wanted it to look as good as possible. So, now, what we can do to try to make this look like 2 separate pieces, I tried 2 things. Because this is spalted maple, I took a piece of black ebony that I use for my hat bands, and I darkened it. This piece, I just cut into it. Okay? I wanted that to look like 2 bowls. This is just cut in. Okay? And this I used a piece of ebony to darken it. And the reason I did that, because it's got a lot of black in it anyway. So you can pass them both around and show the difference. But that's what we're going to do now, and there's a couple ways you can do it. I can use a point tool and go in there and just put a seam in there. That's all you need is a seam, something to look like it's 2 separate pieces. You can use a skew chisel, the point of a skew. In this case, I think that's what I'm going to use. It just looks to me like it's going to fit in there a little bit better. Now all I'm doing is going in here, trying to create a little bit of a seam. There we go. Now it looks like it's two separate pieces of wood opposed to one. Again, when I seated it in the cup chuck, when I seated it in the cup chuck, I probably could have played with it a little bit more and got it to run just a little bit truer. And then these walls would have been, this side is just slightly thicker than this side. Okay? And the same thing, this side is slightly thicker than this side. But you know what? It's close enough. And of course, all of this would have been sanded. That's it. It's a bowl and a bowl. What you could do, as a matter of fact, I talked to Todd about this Thursday. He said, use a donut as that chuck right there with no center in it. Then you could leave the tenon on. Okay? There's several things you could do. Now, like I said, what I wanted to do, does somebody have the one with the bottom on it? Oh, that's it. No, that's not it. Right there. Okay, what I did on that, no, that's all right. What I did on that was I wanted the bottom bowl to look like it was sitting level in the, when it's sitting in the cupboard, bottom one is level, and usually the top one is not. Okay? The only way to do that is to get this bottom bowl to be parallel. Yeah, parallel with the top of this one. So what I did, I put it on a vacuum chuck, and I just kept playing with it and playing with it and playing with it until I got this in line. Then I put that bottom on. Okay, but normally it's not designed, the demo that I saw was not designed for a flat bottom bowl. It's not a bowl that you're going to use. Well, what I get a kick out of at Presque Isle before I did the demo, and nobody had any idea what I was going to do, I brought that in and I set it on the table, a cherry one that came out pretty decent. And I set it on the table, and I just sat back, me and the president, Mark Rose. I says, watch how many people try to pick up those bowls and separate. And they did. They picked them up like, what the hell? And then they thought it was stuck or going like this, pull them apart. And we're just standing back there smiling. And then finally I did say to one of the guys that's easy to get along with, that you know you can joke with, I said, I'll tell you what, you get those two bowls apart, I'll give you $100. Because I says, they got stuck together and I can't get them apart. And you should have seen him, man. I mean, he's, you know. Finally, I said, they're all one piece. I said, that's what the demo's about tonight. And this demo was, like I said, I got this from Tod Raines, the guy that owns woodturningtoolsstore.com. If anybody wrote that down, I apologize. woodturningtoolsstore.com.